Yeah, I'm just gonna start recording because I don't know. I want to talk about all of this, like all the process of wanting to be on YouTube and trying to be on YouTube and starting from zero and having. There's a lot of self doubt that comes with this. There's a lot of guessing because the topic of my videos have to do with immigration and it's a hot topic right now, right? But it's always been my videos have been going on for a year and I always thought that I could keep them private and keep them to myself because it's a battle within me. And so that's what it's about. Immigration, it's about self-deportation, it's about repatriation, but it's also about the ideas and psychology of what we're limited to be able to do. So like YouTube, I don't know if it's a true thing, right? But it's always been an idea. And YouTube as in like, can you make AdSense from YouTube as an undocumented person or someone with DACA or someone that is planning to repatriate, right? And so how does that work and how do you navigate that too? So it's like all these questions that you have and you really can't find those answers like this, right, in this style, because you could look up how to start a YouTube channel and they don't take into consideration when you're a citizen, when you're undocumented, when you're on DACA, when you're 4 months after your DACA expired and you're waiting for the renewal because it already got approved and your biometrics got reused and all the bullshit that we already know about all these things that people wouldn't understand. And if it's over your head, it's not, because you should understand it. But see, that's complicated because if I say something in these videos and you don't happen to fit in that category of people, which is not by our choice, which is why we're that category of people, because we were brought here as kids. Here is the United States. So it's like when I think about leaving, I think about leaving the United States. So all these things come with it. And so the fact that I've never been able to feel confident enough to be on YouTube, not because I'm afraid of the camera, not because I'm afraid of what I'm gonna get pushback on my ideas or I'm gonna get critiqued because I'm not the smartest person and I'm gonna get made fun of and all these things. Beyond that, beyond all the scaries of being on YouTube, you're also in a weird category where there's racism against you. And that's probably another reason why I think about these videos, because I think about not just Hispanic people either. If it's people from different parts of the world, different reasons why they came to the United States, people who love their country more than they've ever loved being here, right? So it's like people have the wrong idea because I've spoke to people who love their country, yo, but it wasn't by choice that they left. Same thing as DACA recipients. It's like DACA recipients didn't have a choice when they were one, when they were 9 months old, when they were 2 years old, when they were 10 years old, when they were fucking 13 years old. They didn't have a choice, so they're here, right? Not by their own choice. But there's other people who are also on DACA or under protective statuses that had to leave because of war-torn countries that were caused by the United States, right? And for them to be in limbo after the US is responsible for what the fuck? Weapons of what mass destruction? What the fuck are you guys talking about? It's always weapons of mass distraction, bro. It's always like make it about something else, make it about racism so we could do all these other things. And that's the point of all of this, because if my video ever become shared across from away from the community that I intended for, because it's all of us. It's not where we're from, right? It's all a shared experience. It doesn't matter where you're from, right? And so it's like the kids from all the war-torn countries that Bush invaded: Iraq, Afghanistan, um, all the places in the Middle East that the U.S. has fucked with. What, Gaza? Move them where? Where like you talk about people as if they're like an ant farm, like a thing that you could just replace, and it's like, and your idea, and this is like, it's it's crazy for all of this shit to be a thing and for someone to be racist just against, like, it's just so stupid because we could preach and talk about you no one's illegal on stolen land, true story, right? But it doesn't matter because we know that history, right? And we understand it and we are frustrated by it. But if everyone else, when you're yelling that and they're just disregarding it because they don't know their own history, and so they're like, yo, the wetback thing, I saw a joke, a comedy, like a short, and it was, I forgot who it was, what comedian, but he's like, why would you call his like Mexicans wetbacks when the Europeans crossed the whole ocean? Aren't they wet bodies, right? So that shit just made me laugh because it's true, and it's just like for you to forget that and then to look at what they're trying to do with the education system and like not to teach critical race theory and all these things. So like, don't teach the history because so we could read it. Like it's the 1984 quote: "He who controls the past controls the future, controls the present, controls the past." Whatever that. The point is, that's it. They're trying to erase something, rewrite history, right? It's just a crazy fucking thing to experience and to be here and to live this and to be like, yes, let me fight for this. And for me to have to explain in these videos why I might think that some white people might find this, or some American citizens that are not understanding what it is to be undocumented. And it's like, this is what you're against. It's just like, what is it that, because I think the way I do, because I question what I'm told, because I've read a book or two, because I don't feel right and understand, I don't feel right and don't understand why America is placed on this thing where we're living it and it's not the reality. And then you see YouTube, because there's access to the world, and you see people talking about, I just want to make it to America, not realizing that when you make it to America, you become, depending on your situation, of course, this is all situational, you become a slave to your job, right? You need that high dollar, and your living quality goes up, but not really, and you don't realize it. You feel that you're making it because you're able to afford. That's why I'm obsessed with what happens with material things, why I have two of everything, why I do these things, right? That it's just for me to feel better, because it's like something like, if I get this camera and I upgrade from this camera, then I'm gonna be better at whatever, and it's gonna make me feel better. It's gonna make me feel better, but it's only temporary. It's a temporary hit, and when the high comes down, you're still the same immigrant, and that's what the fuck you don't understand. That's what you're always battling. It's like, I made it to college. Shit, look, I made it to college. I'm an immigrant, but then you give yourself some credit because you're first gen. You're the first one in your family. Cool, dope. And you keep going, and your life becomes, you hit all the milestones, and you keep looking, and you're like, yeah, I'm hitting the milestones, and your happiness is so far away because you don't understand where it comes from. Because the picture looks the same, yo. You look just like your peers. You look like, you might look a little better off too. You might have a car or two in your name. You might have a mortgage. You might be doing better than the people around you, and you still ain't shit. And that's what it feels like. And no one explains it, and no one talks about that. And so it's like, if if this country, and this is where it comes from, this is where it comes down to, if this country can't look at the cohort of like the DACA recipients, right? Whether they went to trade school, whether they have masters or doctors or whatever the fuck, right? And you can't look at their value and be like, yo, this is the American dream. Like, this is the bullshit that we describe. This is the group of people that fucking started from the bottom because they had no choice and made the best of it. And they tried to make everything better. And you still have to figure out a way to make their life what? Like, what is the purpose? Why is it like, and we're just applying that to 560,000 people as it stands, right? So it's like, that you don't have room for that. Like, you don't have a way to make that better, so you use them as a, like, the bargaining chip and all that stuff. People say that shit, but they don't understand it. There's no bargaining chip. It's not like the DACA recipients could vote, right? It's just like for the family members of, and that's stupid, and that's hard to explain because it has nothing to do with us, but it has nothing to do with this, but it has everything to do with everything. And my point is that if I sit here and think about these things, are these immigrant thoughts? Maybe they're going that way, but I look at all of it because all I've ever known is America. All I've ever known is the United States. All I've ever known is California. The first fucking law that I remember was Prop 187, right? And that was like Pete Wilson. It was Show Me Your Papers law in California in the 90s, yo. That's the first thing I remember seeing protests when I was a little yay high.
Illegal immigration is a serious problem in California.
Documented immigrants coming across the border.
It's been dubbed the Bonsai Dash. Human waves overwhelm border guards and race into California.
And I remember people, the Brown Berets were trying to make a comeback in the 90s. I'm from, I went to school like in Pasadena, but also Highland Park area. It was super LA gang time in the 90s, where it was like Highland Park is now gentrified as fuck. It's nothing but white people. But at that time, you didn't want to go to Highland Park. It was like, that's where the avenues were. And it was just like The Avenues was a gang, and it was just like a Mexican gang, and it was a town right outside of the, like, you could walk to downtown from Highland Park. So now it's super gentrified. Seriously, like now, whatever. Look it up. Highland Park, California. Look that shit up. It's gentrified as fuck. And so the point that I'm making is that at those times in those schools, I remember the kids that were older than me, that they were all, because we were in very Hispanic part. That's what I was trying to explain, that the gangs and all that stuff. The point that I'm making is that, yes, it's gentrified now, but back in those days, it was Hispanic, predominantly Hispanic neighborhoods, right? And so the Brown Berets and all that stuff were trying to make a comeback in the 90s, and there was a Chicano movement, and it was like, there's a very activist community of Hispanic people, of all sorts of multicultural Latin American country people, immigrants that reside in these neighborhoods that are still there, but it was a crazy push out for a while from all these white people, so much so that they changed part of the city into Mount Washington. Whatever, it's the same, it's Highland Park, bro. It's the hills of Highland Park, whatever. The point is that when I was a kid, I remember the teenagers and the high school students. My sister is like 6 years older than me, so she was in the protest, and they were protesting with Cesar Chavez was like a big thing on TV, the Huelga strike. I remember all these, like, yes, that's in the 70s, but what I'm saying is that in the 90s, these teenagers, Brown Berets, were trying to fucking bring it back. And these are some of my first memories of this shit in the 90s. And I remember fuck Pete Wilson. Tupac has a song, Pete Wilson, wanna see you broke for all the shit you own. That was To Live and Die in LA. That was the fucking 1992 or something like that. That's what I'm saying. It's just like, I have a vivid memory of a lady holding the sign that was like something against Prop 187, and it was fuck Pete Wilson.
Opponents labeled Proposition 187 immoral and racist.
Republican Governor Pete Wilson, who was in a tight race for re-election, threw his campaign behind Prop 187.
Governor Pete Wilson asking the state with the highest unemployment to give him a second term. Wilson says, don't blame him, blame illegal immigrants.
And there was like Hispanic and Mexican, and it was a Mexican American flag being tied, someone tied them together, and there was a black guy holding it. And I remember this shit vividly, and they were talking about, it was like a rally that I ended up going to a park near my house, and they were having like, it was like the new school Black Panthers, but it wasn't like that. It was just like a bunch of activism in those neighborhoods, and they were like talking about how we needed to bridge together, and it was a motorcycle gang, 110 to the end, and that's off the 110 freeway. It was just like, this memory is like so fresh in my fucking mind, like it happened yesterday.
Students across the Southland are once again walking out of
school in protest of President Trump's immigration deportations.
But that's what I mean. Like, that's how American I am. It's like, I can't help, but this is my upbringing. I just know that those are the because of then I start to think about social economics and why we were in those neighborhoods, why somehow families that aren't from the same parts of Mexico ended up in this community. And then I start to think of community, and then I started to think about that neighborhood that everyone was afraid of, which is now gentrified because the white people saw the beauty, but it's not the beauty that they saw in the neighborhood. They saw it in the neighborhood as in the community that they displaced. Take it to Mexico City, from what I could read on the internet, it's the same fucking idea. So it's just like, make room for your whiteness. They displace us always, right? And they keep us in this, they displace us so much that we're afraid to be on YouTube. That's how displaced we are. Because I don't think that my words are worth a shit and my ideas aren't worth a shit, because I have to explain myself to the white people for them to understand, for the views to generate money, for me to think about YouTube in a sustainable way, all these fucking things, because my words and my gift of gab ain't good enough, because my thinking isn't good enough. Because of what? Because I haven't mastered the tongue that was pushed upon us, right? And now I'm better with my words than some fucking American people. I don't care. I take pride in some of these things, and you have to stand on this shit, because when they try to take it off from you, all you can be is everything that you are, and you have to take pride in that. And that's what all of this has been, because I don't know if it'll work out. I don't know if people will watch this and be like, immigrant, get off this video. But if you do that, that's a you problem. If you having a problem with my ideas, as wrong as they may be, but if you're mad at the fact that I'm a free thinker and I can think of these things, That's what America has instilled in you too. And that's what I'm saying. If you look at this and you are an American citizen and you don't own a house and you don't make $100,000 a year, if you don't make $1 million a year for Trump, actually probably more you need to make more, because, and you voted for Trump, then you're not mad at me. You're not mad at immigration. You're mad at the lack of education, which you're rooting for. You're lack at the fact that the biggest transfer of wealth, like, does no one else see that Elon Musk wants to be the first trillionaire in the history of the world? That's the goal. Like, fuck everybody else, fuck everything else, win, 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 win. J-Rock, right? Like, that's how American I am, where I'm just talking and I could fucking come up with a rap song like that, obscure, which is J-Rock, Kendrick's homie, who got on first, and all this explanation, and I could ruin an entire video by explanations who I have to go to this magical made-up audience that has no idea what the fuck I'm talking about and has never seen these videos because I have never released them. And that's what I'm talking about. That's the fucking subconscious, self-conscious that comes out in you. It's like, man, it's just all part of all of this, because I always feel like I need to explain myself, because YouTube is a fucking white space for the most part, right? YouTube is American. That's who they want. That's why do you think there's so many people on YouTube from different countries making YouTube videos in English? Right? Because that's the audience. That's the people who are going to sit there and watch the ads, because we're all sad. No matter if you're undocumented or not, America is a sad place to be. That's what the truth is, and it's so hard to break out of the vision that this is what, because you see it. You see when people get forcibly deported and they're longing for America, the place that never treated them right. But you're sitting there thinking like, my biggest fear, I'm thinking of self-deportation. My biggest fear is never being able to come back. I am good, yo. I am so done with America that I'm trying to walk out and never look back, yo. And if that's what I'm gonna do, that's what I'm gonna do. And if me telling these stupid videos, these stupid stories, and expressing how I feel, and someone's gonna disagree with what it is I'm going through, I could care less, because this is what I'm going through, yo. And this immigration shit, by choice or by hook or by crook, I experienced it, I lived it. I'm not leaving because I need to. I'm not in jeopardy of like being chased by anybody. I'm leaving because I'm fed up with feeling this way and having a lot of the answers, but having too many theories that I haven't been able to test. I'm ready to take the fucking test. I'm ready to fucking go and experience this and being like, yo, I'm ready to get my freedom of speech in the most free country. I made a video about this yesterday, and that's what I'm trying to explain. It's like, how is it that I live in this freedom of speech, freest country in the world, right? But I am afraid to put my thoughts out there because of the topic, and not just because of the government coming to make a spectacle out of me, which is what I said in the video yesterday, that they're going to come get me to make a spectacle out of a YouTuber who has 20 subscribers. It was a joke, but sometimes I don't explain myself. But I don't have the capacity to explain it all, right? And I know that I get super passionate about these, and I know that sometimes it makes a lot of sense. And these are very hard to edit, because if I cut something that I said at the beginning of the video and then refer back to it later, and I happen to have cut that part, it doesn't make sense, because it just feels like I'm talking to whoever, and I feel like the audience that would watch this would understand some of those things, because you don't need context. If you're undocumented in America, if you're on DACA in America, if you've experienced these things in America, then there's not a lot of context that you need to listen to me, right? And be like, oh, okay, wait, this sounds familiar. Like, whether it is, it's not exact. It's never going to be exact. It's super situational. It has to do where you were born to where you landed, right? And where you were raised and where you plan to go back to. It's just a lot of things. And it's like, in the video I made yesterday that I'm editing right now, I said something about how Mexicans looking to self-deport, sometimes for whatever reason they don't want to go back to Mexico, which is fine. But what the point I was making with that is that it all has to do with our brainwashing, as the American exceptionalism has been pushed, because the reason why we're here, the reason why we were brought as toddlers, is the same American propaganda about the American dream and the streets paved with gold, which is the same reason why the migrants come now. And it's always been the same bullshit. It's always been the same thing, and that's what I'm talking about. That it's like now that I'm experiencing wanting to go, wanting to get over this, right? Then you start to look at everything different and your perspective changes, and I feel like that's where I am, and that's where my frustration with this things are, because I don't want to go and explain myself to someone who wouldn't understand. And if someone who isn't an undocumented person or on DACA or whatever ends up watching these videos and you're against me for these ideas, for me standing for the American people, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like I'm not sitting here mad about just what's happening to the undocumented population. I'm sitting here mad at the people who voted for this, for America falling apart, and you guys being okay with that. Like, that's what I mean. It's like it's a collective thing, yo. That it's like, why do I feel like I have to defend America more than Americans? That's what I'm saying. It's like, it's the idea. This shit was built on the idea, and if it used to be dope, that's what I always talk about. And it's so hard to describe because America used to be dope and it changed, right? Because it used to be worth going through the struggles of being undocumented. And that hasn't been true for a long time. It used to be worth it to be okay, to feel safe, as in a safer place. I don't know that if that's true, because I'm not afraid that if I put my videos out there that the government's gonna come knocking at my door to go take me out. Maybe, right? What I'm afraid of is the evil that is within America and what they represent, because now it's okay to do Nazi salutes on stage when you're the richest man in the world and your goal is to become the first trillionaire, right? That's dangerous. That's the oligarchy. That's the control of data and the way that we look at everything I described, because it all has to do with the propaganda and the exceptionalism and the things that they dangle in front of us that we chase. Because if we keep chasing, keep working towards the American dream that we'll never accomplish, then we don't have to pay attention to the rug being pulled out from under us. And that's the point of all this. It's for undocumented people, because this is the experience that I know I would share with some people. We're not the same. We've experienced different things, but a lot of similarities, right? But it's also for the American people, because I have American siblings that are American citizens that will be affected by this, because I have my wife is an American citizen. So it's like these things, the end of America as we know it, for the replacement of like unashamed, unabashed racism and everyone being okay with that. What is it worth to stay in America for that? If that's what the slight majority prefers, what is the purpose, y'all? I don't know. And I don't know that I'll find the answers. And I don't know that once I test my theory of moving to Mexico and going back to where I came from and doing all those things, I don't know that it'll help. But I know that just thinking about all this stuff differently has helped. And it's made me more brave, and it's made me want to put these ideas out there. And if there's people that disagree, then so be it. I can't do it different. This has been my life. So I hope this video finds you well. Keep your chin up. Peace.